last week I've been noticing something. Thank yous. I've been noticing how many times somebody has said thank you to me and how many times I have said thank you to other people. It's courtesy, isn't it? So the question is, have you ever noticed anything like that? You know, you can go to the grocery store, the drugstore, all kinds of people who serve you, and you might say thank you to them, and they'll say thank you back to you, and I think, isn't this nice and courteous? And it is. Now there's a man, a very nice man that comes to our house, and he's making sure that our house is mouse-free. Now when I say thank you to him, I put a little feeling into it. I do want any nieces in my house. So that's what I'm trying to say, is that we can say thank you and just let it be the words, or we can actually put some feeling with it. And the feeling is what is so powerful, because then a simple thank you turns into something that has power with it. Feelings are powerful. Feelings are those things, they are the catalyst that get us going. Feelings are the fuel that keeps us going. And it's often said that when feelings cease, then action ceases too. But there are some people who say, ooh, I don't want anything to do with feelings. Some people don't want to talk about them, don't want to get into them. I challenge that. Because let's just say you're sitting at your desk and there's something that you want in the kitchen. And you've got to get up and go all the way across the room and into another room where you're going to find whatever it is that you want. But if you don't feel like doing this, you're not going to do it. You're going to just sit right there. You have to have a feeling that motivates you to get up, to say, yes, I do want to do this. Oh, that's a simple thing, isn't it? But I'm just trying to say that we use our feelings all the time. And now I think it might be a good idea sometimes to express our feelings to others. And that's what I'm saying with giving thanks. That we really and sincerely need to put our feeling into our thank yous. And wow, what does that do? It actually taps into a power that is within us, the power of our own heart. And when we sincerely give thanks and we say to someone, I so appreciate you, what does it do to them? It taps into a power inside of them, and they have this feeling, oh, I just want to do better. I think we can see this so clearly with children. Years ago, I used to drive a school bus. That was another life. And it was a good job. It was fun. It was enjoyable. But I started out driving a school bus thinking that the kids are noisy, so I'm going to have to be noisier. The kids yell, I'm going to have to yell louder. And I soon found out that that didn't work at all. Nobody listened to anything I said. So one day I decided that the best way to do this is to pull over to the side of the road, stop the bus, unbuckle myself, get up, and just stand there and look at them. And they became quiet. And then I said to them, thank you for being on this bus with me. Because now we have a relationship that we can develop here over this school season. And I know, looking at all of you, that you're good kids. And I expect then that you would give me the same respect that I'm going to give you. And they just look like, what? What's the matter with her, you know? I think kids get used to yelling. I'm not saying they get that at home, but I think they get it many places in this life. And so when I was quiet and just said thank you to them, I brought out something in them. Now, I'm not saying they were good and perfect after that, but they were better. And then as I would drive down the road every once in a while, I'd glance in the rearview mirror and see this long line of kids behind me, and I'd bless them. You can't imagine the difference that that made. So this whole idea of giving thanks is so important. It seems to honestly bring out the best. Now, what does that do with animals? You know, I found out that yelling at my dog doesn't work either. It just makes her more hyper and more doing what she's doing that I don't like. So I found out that speaking to her in a gentle voice and giving her a pat on the head, nice loving pat, works a whole lot better. And I have heard that plants even respond to this. There might be something to that. I brought a plant in from outdoors. It had been there all summer long. And I brought it in actually when it was a bit too cold, I think. And when I first hung it up and looked at it, I thought, oh, I don't know about this. It's not looking so good. And then I thought, no, wait a minute. I have to change my thoughts about this plant. So I gave it a little nurturing, and I started talking to it. And I just said, you know what, you're going to be fine. It's a spider plant. It has so many babies that they are just hanging over my desk. It's absolutely beautiful. Did I have anything to do with that? I'll never know, will I? But I certainly didn't hurt it any. And you know, the cells of our body, too. When you think about how they respond to our good words, instead of our words of mumbling and grumbling about our aches and our pains, sometimes I think that when I talk about things like that I don't like in my body, my cells are going, don't like it. But when I'm saying thank you to my body, they're like dancing. Didn't Myrtle Fillmore, co-founder of Unity, do this? Didn't she apologize, first of all, to the cells of her body when she received what could be called a death sentence because she had tuberculosis? And after apologizing, she began to give thanks and praise the cells of her body, all the good that they were doing for her. So you see, I think there's a lot for us to learn from the simple thing of giving thanks. As we look at the story that we are doing, and I brought the book along just so you know what the book looks like and that it's featured in the bookstore, the Lazarus Blueprint. And we're looking at this story of Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead. And I can imagine that a lot of people don't believe this story. And that's okay. We don't have to believe it. We're looking for the hidden blueprint that is within this story that tells us how to deal with the difficult things of life. And so in the steps that are in this book, we are in that fourth step of giving thanks. And here's how Jesus did it. Two things he did. First, he looked upward, and then he gave thanks. And you can imagine the crowd that was standing around him on that day by the tomb of Lazarus thought, what's he doing? Giving thanks for what? Nothing has happened. Here we are standing in front of this tomb. There's a rotting body inside of this cave. And he's standing there giving thanks. Let's just look at first what he did, looking upward. Because it's important that he was telling us, demonstrating something for us, that we have to look away from the problem. Can't look at what's in that cave. We can't look at what is in that cave in our own lives either. Whatever problem you're dealing with this morning, whatever that is for you, we have to give ourselves time to look away from it. And so that's exactly what he did. He looked upward. Now, if this were a story that we took on the surface level, then this would be a physical story, and we would say that he looked upward. But this is a spiritual story. His eyes could have been closed, but he looked upward, his inner eyes. That's what we're talking about. Here's a technique that you and I can use too. Our eyes could be closed, but we are thinking in an upward way. You know, Einstein was a very smart man in so many different ways. Because, in effect, that's what he said. You have to raise your thinking above whatever the level of this problem is that you have. And most people, well, I've got a problem, I've got to start digging around in the problem. And when we do that, all we're doing is giving power to it. Giving power to that which we don't want. And so, as he said, you have to raise your thinking above that problem. And then Jesus giving thanks. And this is a different kind of thanks because it's an upfront thanks. Giving thanks before anything is even seen. Why do we do that? Why do we give that kind of thanks? You know, in our prosperity class, that's what we're doing. We are creating a vision for our lives of how we want it to be. It's not that my life isn't good now. Well, why can't it be better? And so we start our vision with this. I am so happy and grateful that. And then, how do I want my life to be? This is the Christ of me speaking within me that's saying, yes, you can have a better life. You can express more of your potential. Of course you can. And so we give thanks then. We give thanks for what's coming, for all the blessings that are yet to come. And why do we do that? Because our brain is wired that way. As soon as we start saying, acting as if, and putting ourselves in that future life that we want, we are making new neural pathways for our brain. And if we consistently do this, then the mind takes those pathways and it begins to think new thoughts, have new feelings. We begin to behave in a different way, and our lives begin to be, what? Transformed. Isn't that what we're after here? We say in unity, change your thinking, change your life. Well, it all begins up here with our thoughts, but then it becomes our words. So Jesus is saying to us here, you've got to use your words and use them in an upward way. Do we have any idea how powerful our words are? I wonder. Because I've heard people say, it doesn't make any difference what I say. Really? Guess what? You are saying words and you are putting them out into the ethers. Charles Fillmore, in his book, The 12 Powers of Man, says to us that every word we utter makes an imprint in the astral ethers. And when we unite that word with spirit, now we've really got power. And this word continues forever. It perpetuates. He also says that the power center is in our throat. So when we speak, we are using this power center right here, and this center energizes all the energies, what word do I want? The vibratory energies of our bodies. That's amazing, isn't it? This power center. If you go out and look at the painting that we have out there that leads into this sanctuary, you will see that over on the left-hand side, and all those depictions are of the 12 powers, but the one over on the left side in the middle is of a woman. And there's something, a flow, coming out of her mouth. That's the sound. Those are words. That's what that symbolizes. And if you look closely, you will see that there is a circle. So whatever she is saying is going out and it is coming back to her. Our words are so important. This vibratory center right here, Charles Fillmore says, it is the open door between the formless and the world of form. It's the open door between the invisible realm and the visible. So when we speak our word, and we speak it with feeling, we have just begun the process of creation. We have just begun the process of transforming our own lives. And when we do that, we lift the whole world. What a responsibility we have with our words. What I'd like to do is just tell you a little story. It's a modern story. See, we're doing this old story that is what, over 2,000 years old? But sometimes we need a modern one. So I'd like to tell you about two people. And that story is actually in the book. But I found the story fascinating because what it does is use all the steps of this story, the Lazarus story that we're using. Jim and Tricia were computer technicians, very good at their job. And they decided that they wanted to start a business. They had a friend named Roger. He was a very successful salesman. And so the three of them decided that they would invest their money, their savings, into this business. They would take out a business loan. And they did this. They had a thriving business. It was beautiful. The three of them working together. And then one day Roger disappeared with all the funds. Now, we read about this in the newspapers. How often have you read a story like that? That these people, I don't know where their conscience is. I guess they don't have any. But we're not here to really discuss Roger. We're here to discuss these two people that were left with nothing, financially ruined, and deeply depressed. They were so involved in their problem that that's all they could see. Nobody's blaming them. We're not criticizing them. That's just the way it was. Until one day a friend said, you know, I've been reading this book, the Lazarus Blueprint, and there are steps in that book that I think could help you. And so they said, well, why not? We have nothing to lose, do we? Let's try. And so the first step was then that they had to turn away from their problem for a while. They had to actually find something else to do so that they weren't thinking about the problem all the time. And they found that when they did that, they relaxed a little. They found that maybe a new idea came to them. And so the second step quickly followed that for them. It was take away the stone. When Jesus stood by that tomb of Lazarus, who had already been dead 4 days, and he stands there and he says, take away the stone. And the crowd thinks he's crazy. There's a stench coming from that cave. No. But the stone, you see, all the characters in this story, and even the stone, represent an aspect of you and me. So the stone is our mindset. It isn't so much what happens to us in this life, it's how we think about what happens to us. And so that stone represents how we have set our minds to think about what has happened to us. And it blocks the opening of the cave where you and I, and certainly these two people, Jim and Tricia, are sitting with their stinking problem. So the way we get the stone out of there is to change our minds. They were looking at their situation as hopeless. They were so discouraged, they felt as if they were at the bottom of everything. It was all black. And then when they began to see that if they just changed their mind a little bit and looked at it from a different perspective, that things would change. And they began to change. And the third step is so tied in with that expect good things. You can expect good things because the Spirit of the universe is working with you and is always on your side, always working in your behalf. Why couldn't you expect good things? And so they took on that step. And then they came to the fourth one about giving thanks up front. Now they had a little difficulty because they could not see how they could do that. How can you give thanks for something that isn't even here? But they began to do it anyway because they were committed. And every evening they would do this. At first they said it was so hokey. It just seemed so unreal. And it was just words that they were saying. And then gradually they began to put feeling with those words. And instead of the words being weak and like, oh, okay, we're just saying them, suddenly the words took on a life of their own. And the words became strong and they became confident in what they were saying. Thank you. Thank you, Spirit, that there is a solution here. And it's on its way to us. One night, they were sitting eating supper together. And they looked around at the room in which they were sitting and realized how beautiful it was. They had inherited a farmhouse from Jim's parents. It was a beautiful homestead, big. It was well kept, and they just looked around and gave thanks for where they were. And then an idea came. This could be a bed and breakfast. This could be the most beautiful bed and breakfast that anyone has ever seen. And the idea felt so right to them that the next day they set about selling the rest of their computer inventory. And they got busy fixing up this house, this home, to be a bed and breakfast. And it became a thriving business. But here's what they said. If they had not risen above their crisis, that's where they'd still be. Running around in this problem, getting nowhere. If they hadn't raised their sights and said thank you for what was not there, but it was coming. It was a solution. If they had not done that, they said they wouldn't be in this wonderful business now. In our prosperity class, we heard Mary Mann Morrissey say essentially the same thing when she lost everything. Her husband, her marriage, her home, her business, the whole ministry, gone. Gone. And it took her 3 months to get herself back. But she began to say that there was something in her that would not give up. Well, I mean to say there's something in all of us that isn't going to give up either. There's something in us that knows that the Spirit of life lives in here. It was Emerson who said, once you have made a decision, the universe conspires to work in your behalf to make it happen. We need to believe that. We need to trust in the Spirit of life that lives within us. Trust it. The universe requires only 2 things of us. And the first one is an invitation from you and me that we allow the Spirit to work through us. Often in our prayers we say, oh, Spirit, give me. and we expect things to fall in our lap. Spirit doesn't work that way. Spirit has to work through us. And so there's the invitation. Spirit, work through me. I'm open. I surrender to you. And the next requirement from the universe is expect that it will do just that. It will work through you. Believe that. Give thanks. Add your feelings to whatever it is that you are saying thank you for. And then let your words be, Spirit, work through me, because I know you lead me to the good that is here for me in this life. Namaste.